Hello and welcome to the Non-Perfect Parents Club podcast. I'm Emma, a mama of 2 girls, an ex-nursery practitioner and the creator of the Non-Perfect Parents Club. The Non-Perfect Parents Club is all about support, honesty, truths, acknowledging that none of us can be perfect parents because it's impossible, and basically just speaking the unspoken. The only rule here is no judgment allowed. I love hearing people's stories. I love finding out about other parents, their family dynamics, their values and how they tick. So that is what this podcast is going to be. Some great honest conversations about parenting, hopefully delving into some nitty-gritty thoughts and feelings that will make us all laugh, cry and sigh a big sigh of relief. Hello and welcome to the first episode of the Non-Perfect Parents Club podcast. So normally it is going to be me asking the questions, but today for the first episode I'm in the hot seat. I'm joined by my friend Lauren and she's going to ask me the questions and hopefully I'm going to get this podcast off to a good start. Hello Lauren, thank you for joining me.
Welcome to your own podcast.
Pressure!
I'm feeling the pressure. Right, okay. So I have 7 questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the first question is for you to tell us a little bit about your family dynamic or / heritage.
Okay, so I come from a very 2.4 children, as I say, family, and I am in a very 2.4 children family. So there's obviously me and my husband, and we have 2 girls, and the dog. Can't miss him out. And before that it was me and my sister and my mum and dad, and grandparents wise, what I'm trying to say is we're a very straightforward stereotypical family, I guess. We're not sort of any blended family within ours. My grandparents lived in Ireland, so we have got a little bit of Irish heritage. My gramps was Dublin, born and bred, and my nan and my mum are from the Midlands, Coventry way, and then the rest of my family is very much Yorkshire, Lancaster. We've stuck to our roots.
Okay, and that feels normal to have that kind of 2.4.
Yeah, I guess that's all I've kind of known really. So yeah,
Okay, cool. So, as you know very well, the main rule of the Non-Perfect Parents Club is no judgment allowed.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever felt judged in your parenting? And can you tell us about it?
Yes. I think I've actually talked about this in a recent post that I did. I think it was on my Instagram. So one of the main, I will have felt judged loads of times, I think, but one of the main things that sticks out to me is around behaviour. So I have a lot of internal conflict when it comes to acceptable behaviour, unacceptable behaviour with the girls. Me and my husband are both from very different families, and it's I feel like we've had to find a balance in between. So I think my husband is very laid back, and he's come from quite a laid back family, whereas my family was very, I guess, a little bit old fashioned, quite strict, and there was a lot of things that you had to do because it was a done thing, or it was very very strict around manners and being polite. And just as for one example, if you went somewhere and they offered you a drink, it was the polite thing to kind of say, no, I'm fine, thank you, even if you
really?
Wanted a drink. Yeah, that's never been discussed. I don't know, if my mum listens to this, I don't know if she'll maybe even realise that, but that's what I felt from situations, and it was kind of frowned upon if I as a child said, oh yes please, I'll have a drink, or yeah, I'll have a biscuit, and it was no, you don't do that. And I think a lot of that came from my nan.
Right. Okay.
So there was, so I've had a lot of internal conflict.
How to behave in certain situations.
Yeah, and I feel, especially with the wildcat, that I was because I was finding my feet as a parent, I was maybe sometimes a little bit too strict. I always try not to have regrets. So there's nothing that I kind of think, oh, I shouldn't have done that. I feel like the boundaries we had were right, but I just feel like I could have been a little bit softer with them, rather than being so uptight and rigid. And I feel like I've kind of relaxed over time. I mean, anyone that knows us will know that Bunny has a lot more relaxed parenting than the Wildcat did, which is mainly down to personalities, but a little bit because I've kind of, felt like I knew what I was doing a little bit more second time round.
Yeah. So how much have you spoken to your husband about the kind of parenting style then? If you say that you came from very different kind of backgrounds in terms of like expectations of behaviour, I guess. Mm-hmm. Do you work together quite a lot?
For a long time we were probably quite against each other. Like, I would do a lot of the boundary setting and stuff, and then if I wasn't there, he wouldn't, because he maybe necessarily didn't. I don't know if he didn't agree with it. I think he's probably changed now. I think we're more balanced out now. But I know there was a lot of stuff, and I think he would have thought that I was very uptight and too strict. It's
really hard, isn't it? Because that's a conflict in itself.
Yeah,
in terms of,
and it's really hard then to kind of set a boundary and manage behaviour when you're both on completely opposite ends of the scale. So we have had to find a balance. I don't know if we've necessarily found our balance, but we've definitely worked at it, and we're a lot more balanced, I guess, than we maybe were initially.
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I've kind of always been conscious of, and say like out and about or with friends or whatever, and there'd be like stuff, if mainly with the Wildcat, if she'd be doing stuff and I'd feel like I'd have to, step in, and then I'd be conscious like, should I have stepped in? Am I being too strict? And I know there has been like comments mentioned in the past, not like nasty or anything, but where you just get the vibes and that people are thinking, oh, like,
you feel the whole world's watching you.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's, I mean, a lot of other stuff I don't really care. People can judge me, and I just think, yeah, whatever. I'm the parent, and I'm confident now in who I am as a parent and my parenting abilities. So there's not a lot, I don't think, that really bothers me. But that's the one thing that sticks out in my mind that I've always been really conscious of, and like, am I doing this bit right? Is this the right thing to do?
Yeah, and then that comes back to the whole premise of what you do, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a very generalised question, but how do you feel about parenting? Okay, is it good? Is it bad? Has it changed you? And have you got any regrets?
I know that I'm a good parent, which I think we have to say. For a long time, I didn't know that I was a good parent. I would have never, ever have said that when the Wildcat was small. But I think as I've been a parent for longer, as the girls have grown up and as I've got older, and the more that I've kind of done this support stuff and the Non-Perfect Parents Club, I've realised that, do you know what, I am a really good parent. And I think it's important to say that, because so often we feel like we can't say that. It's something that I'm always working at. I kind of never just stick to my one channel of parenting, if that kind of makes sense. I'm always looking at different theories of things. I'm always looking at different things that I can do, ways to manage behaviour, ways to connect with the girls, communication, all that kind of stuff.
Do you feel like your girls benefit from that as you kind of take on that yourself?
I hope so. I think they do. I think for me as a parent, it's important to, because obviously as the girls are growing, they're changing too. So if I just stayed rigid in my parenting, I'm going to struggle to connect with them. So I think it's important to do that. So yeah, I think they must benefit from that really, because I'm always looking at who they are and how I can best meet their needs and connect with them.
Yeah, so it's not a one size fits all, is it?
Yeah.
It's very unique.
Yeah.
To the context of
Definitely.
where you all are.
What was the...
So has it changed you? Has parenting changed you?
Yes, definitely. I think that's... I always say that becoming a mama was like the making of me, and I honestly think it was. It's just opened my eyes completely to the world, I guess, and people and what's important in life. Things that I care about that I wouldn't have probably even entertained before. It's changed my whole outlook on life.
Okay. So you said very briefly in the last question that you kind of regret maybe feeling or allowing yourself to feel quite so judged early on.
Mm-hmm.
Have you got any other regrets?
I don't know. I always try and not to have regrets. I kind of, anything that I do that I think, that shouldn't have happened, I shouldn't have done that, that was a bad choice. I kind of don't think of it as a regret. I try and make it as a learning curve. I hope that doesn't sound like too pretentious, but that's just kind of, I don't want to, my long-term thing is I kind of want to leave like a good legacy behind. So for me, having regrets isn't how I want to do my life. I want to kind of look back and be able to say, oh God, yeah, I did that, and laugh about it rather than be embarrassed by it or think, I mean, obviously there's stuff that I in life that I wish that I hadn't have done, but in terms of parenting, I don't think, there's nothing that springs to mind anyway.
I guess that's kind of ties in with the idea of non-judgment as well though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's kind of living in that headspace.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not judging yourself too much for it.
Yeah. That's
and
it.
looking forward instead of back.
And I think to be able to kind of move forward as a parent, you've got to do that. I mean, it's no secret that I've got anxiety, and at one point that was really bad. And I think in that time I kind of was stuck in all the like angst of what I was feeling and what was going on. And if you kind of stay stuck in that, you don't get anywhere, and it's a bit like self-sabotage, I guess, and that isn't how I want to live, and it isn't how I want to feel, and I don't want the girls to see me like that. I'm always trying to think, like, am I being a good role model to them? If they were doing what I'm doing now, how would I feel? And that often will kind of, like, give me a kick up the arse, I guess, to kind of be like, right, come on, you've got to set the right example to your girls.
Interesting. Okay, so is there anything in your life that has shaped how you parent, would you say?
Yes. This is quite a hard question for me, actually. I'm a pretty open book, but there's, I guess, some things that I probably won't talk about around this because it'll involve other people, and this is about me. I didn't have a bad childhood. I had a really good childhood. But there are lots of things that kind of I wanted to do differently. And there's kind of a lot of how I parent is based on my experiences, I guess, and mainly my feelings, and that I don't want the girls to feel how I did growing up. So I didn't have any support. I didn't have any backup. So, like I said, my grandparents lived in Ireland. We saw them once a year, twice a year at a push. My other set of grandparents, I'm not going to discuss because that's a whole different story. But yeah, so it was literally just me, my mum and dad, and my sister. And we had a few like family friends and stuff, but no one close. We didn't have a network, we didn't have a community. And then my parents started their own business, so they were like putting everything into that. which you have to do when you start a business. But I guess I felt quite lonely.
I was going to say, it sounds like you felt quite isolated.
Yeah, and like that's I don't like that feeling. I think like my mum and dad are quite happy to they quite like living in their own space, and they're happy with that, whereas I'm a bit different to them, I think. And I did feel quite isolated. So something that I kind of prioritised for our family, as in me, my husband and my girls, is we've got quite a good, strong community around us of like friends. Our friends are kind of our family. And I'm always kind of trying to do stuff to like create and strengthen that community, I guess, and ensure the girls have got other people around them, so that like, I mean, obviously they're getting older now, and I know that we are going to fall out, we're not going to see eye to eye, but I want them to be able to have people that they can go to when they need someone, even if it's not the fact that we've fallen out. Maybe they just want someone else to talk to, or just want to get out of the house for a bit.
So it's people that they feel kind of like a role model, I guess, but people that they feel 100% comfortable with, and feel welcomed.
Just having that backup. That's one of like the main things. The other things are kind of like communicating with them, and not being too, like I've mentioned already, rigid in my parenting, and just being able to connect with them. I've lost track of what the question is now.
No, so I suppose that comes quite naturally to you then, doesn't it, to have that communication? So it sounds like just as a person you're not very into the rigid style of parenting anyway, and it maybe didn't suit you growing up as such, so it's kind of something that is very much a part of who you are, and how you will then obviously parent. And it's a massive driving force, isn't it, for what you do for other parents as well. Okay. So coming back to values, you mentioned that right at the start, I think, in your intro. So what's your biggest value when it comes to parenting? Or you can discuss more than one, but maybe try and focus, because we could talk for 5 hours. So maybe, the biggest one.
I think the biggest one is probably connection with the girls. I think it's so important, because if you haven't got that connection with your kids, it's not gonna work. Like if you've got that connection, you can overcome anything.
I like that. I really like that. Yeah.
And for me, like, I guess anything that I could go on to say now, the root of that is having a good connection with them. So that is like I think the most important thing to me. And I always say, like, I want my intention when I'm parenting is, I say this now because we've not hit the teen years yet, but I want them, once they're grown and they've flew the nest, or whatever the saying is, that they'll always want to come back to me, and it won't be because they feel they have to, it'll be because they want to.
Because you've got that genuine connection.
Yeah. And
so can you share maybe just one or two ways that you try to build that connection?
Oh gosh, putting me on the spot now.
There you go, throw one in.
I don't know really. What do I do? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I guess I try, and a lot of it's to do with being flexible and doing things that make them feel loved and know that they're valued, which is really hard to answer because they're both so different. And that's a really hard part of parenting. Like, I think the way I parent, I do sometimes make it harder for myself, but I do that because I'm playing the long game. I kind of guess I don't always parent in the here and now, which obviously I do sometimes because I lose my shit and everything like everybody does, but I'm always thinking about the long game rather than, what's...
Do you think your girls, because you've said that they're very, very different and you kind of have to be very mindful of that when you are connecting with them, are they aware that that you're making a different connection with them?
I don't know
if... Does that
if...
make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if they're necessarily aware, but I try and make them aware. Okay. So I guess, in answer to your question about what do I do, communicating is like a big part of connecting. It's having good communication.
Yeah.
Which I don't actually think a lot of people do. I think being a good communicator is a really hard thing to do. And you've really got to work at it. So like you're saying there, like there'll be times where I've found like, for instance, when Bunny was a little bit smaller, she obviously needed a lot of attention because she was smaller and the wildcat was that bit older, and I had to kind of not reassure the wildcat, but we had quite a few conversations around why it might feel like Bunny was getting more time. It wasn't the fact that she was getting more time, it was the fact that her needs were different. Okay. So I guess what I kind of do is a lot of communicating and explaining, and they probably get sick of me. I know they get sick of me like saying stuff and like, are you all right, and trying to communicate with them, but I think they know I'm doing it with the best intentions. So yeah. Well, hopefully when they're older they will.
I'm sure. Yeah, it's the long game.
Yeah,
it's the long game. Okay, what's been your biggest challenge so far?
I think the biggest challenge, this is something I talk about quite a lot actually, and it's I guess becoming the parent I am with next to no support. I often talk about how I've not had any support as a parent, or very little support, and I think that to be the parent that I am with that, I think I've done really well to do that. And I think having the strength to be the parent that I want to be. I know from like the parents that I speak to and the stuff that I do, that there's so many of us out there that parent in a way that we feel we have to or we should do, and it's often governed by partners or family or friends, and I kind of try not to let that happen to me, and it's not easy. It's been really hard to do that, but I'm quite proud of myself for like having the strength to do that.
It sounds like you're really trying to make it very authentic to you. So when you say that other people, and you've spoken to lots of people obviously with the work that you do, people struggle with that themselves because, like you say, the influences, society or their family setup or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess when you start out, when you become a parent, all you know is what you've lived as a child, and then depending what age you have your kids, obviously as an adult, your relationship with your parents and family. So it's not always easy to kind of look outside the box or look outside what you know, and so many people just repeat the parenting they know, whereas I don't feel like I've necessarily done that.
So like breaking the mould.
Yeah, and I feel like I've kind of, this is a whole other topic that I won't go into today, but I feel like I've kind of tried to break the generational trauma and do things differently. Like there's stuff that I know within my family that's it's come down from, it's stuff that my nan experienced, and she parented it in her way because of that, and then that kind of passed down onto my mum, and I know that my mum struggled with a lot of things, so I've kind of tried to break that cycle a bit, and rather than repeat it, I've tried to break it. And
it's very, very different, isn't it? The generations now, like
massively.
Yeah, just going up to like your parents and then your grandparents and beyond. The world is such a different place right now.
And do you know what? Something I should have mentioned that very first question, actually, when we were talking about like heritage. So my nan, she was adopted as a baby. It's a really cool story, actually. It's like something that should be in a book. So my nan's birth mum was a maid at a big manor house, and we worked it out to a New Year's Eve party, and she got in a bit of a situation, let's say, with the lord of the manor.
Oh my goodness.
And came about my nan, but she was adopted, and her birth mum had 4 children, but my nan was the only one that got adopted. So there was a lot of trauma, I think, around that kind of passed down. So, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so what do you wish you could change about parenting in general? So as in for everyone, which is your mission in life, and it's what you do. So I'm sure you've got a fair amount to say on this.
A huge question for me. Like you say, this is why I'm doing the Non-Perfect Parents Club, because when I became a parent, there was so much with the world that I was like, oh my God, like I just want to change this, I want to make it different, I want to make it better.
So when, just as a little side thing, when was that kind of moment of realisation? When, at what point, how old was she? You know, when did you think, hang on a minute, I need to do something about this?
I can't actually remember how old the wildcat was, but I remember her being a baby before 1, but not a tiny baby. I guess it'll probably be maybe 6-7 months, and it mainly, I was quite lonely. I was the first one out of my then friends to have a baby, and because obviously everyone else was at work, I was on my own, and all I'd wanted to be was a mum, and so I literally put everything into being a mum, my heart and soul. I lost myself, and just became mama. I've gone off on a tangent now and I can't remember the point of why I was saying this.
No, it's obviously a time that you're just kind of reflecting on, isn't it? But it was just, for me, it's just really interesting that you kind of had this bit of an epiphany, and it was just like, what drove you to then create this?
Yeah, so it was when I was kind of, I guess, in the deep, dark depths of early motherhood and advice and stuff like that, and that was at the time of like online forums and stuff, and any forum you went on, people just turned against each other and was arguing, and I'm not about that. Like that isn't for me. And it was like, well, where'd you get advice from then? Any like professionals you turned to, it was all very textbook, which again, that isn't really me. And I guess that was when I kind of thought, well, another thing was, there was a few of us that we all had babies at once, but I was the first one and everyone else was maybe 5 or 6 months behind me, I think. So I'd get friends kind of, you know, just chatting in conversations, but they were coming to me asking advice and stuff, and I felt like I was answering questions or sending them to the right place and stuff like that, and that was kind of where I thought, hang on a minute,
there's a gap here.
We need something. There isn't anything out there. And another thing was, like, as I kind of got a little bit further into motherhood, I didn't, and I've talked about this before as well, I didn't really feel like I fit in, because I loved being a mama. I put everything into it. I enjoyed it. But at the same time, I wasn't like your stereotypical, quotation marks, earth mum, or, you know, what the media portrayed as a good mum. I was still who I was. I swore. I was, you know, not like, I wasn't that kind of person. And I guess I struggled to find where I fit in to...
And the balance between the two. I guess.
And even just like, you know, like looking for groups and stuff. It was like, well, where do I fit in? Because I don't fit into one of the stereotypical groups that I was finding. And that kind of put me a bit out of balance as well. For a while I felt quite lost, because I guess I didn't really know who I was.
Yeah, so that's like big questions about your identity and things, isn't it?
And I think that's maybe where I've come to the point where I'm confident in who I am and who I am as a parent, because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I fit. So I guess I just kind of cracked on with it and thought, right, well, stuff you all. I'm just gonna
do my
be
own
me,
thing.
and yeah. So yeah, I didn't, like a lot of what I've talked about again is not having support. I kind of noticed as well that there wasn't the village anymore. I have a big issue with like the media when it comes to parenting, because I feel like they've caused a massive, I don't know what the word is, but like I feel like it's portrayed to us that we're meant to do this alone. The villages are a thing of a past. You don't rely on your neighbours, your friends. You chose to have a child, so now you have to do it. And I don't think that's the case. We were never ever meant to parent alone, and I don't think we can do it alone. We need that village to be a good parent and to not just survive as a parent but thrive as a parent.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
That ties, it's that sense of community, and I guess it comes back to that feeling of you feeling quite isolated and lonely.
Yeah.
And knowing that didn't feel right for you.
Yeah, and I think we owe it to our children to thrive as parents, because we're raising the next generation, and when we send them off into the big wide world, we don't own our children. We can't make them be who we want them to be. We have to let them be who they are and who they want to be, and we have to support them in doing that. So we as parents need the support to be able to thrive as parents, so that we can raise our children to then send them off, and then they will be these amazing human beings.
Yeah, love it. Okay, fabulous. Well, that was my last question.
Okay, well, thank you for
pleasure.
Being the host today.
My pleasure.
I hope you've all enjoyed listening to the first episode. I didn't go off on too much of a tangent, I didn't think.
No,
for once. I think we've
done
quite well there. I'm hoping to get guests on this podcast for you all to answer the same questions that I have. So if anyone would like to come and sit in the hot seat, please get in touch. I don't know yet how often this will be recorded. And if you follow the Non-Perfect Parents Club and know what I'm like, you'll know I'm a little bit, what's the word? Can't think of the word now. But I will keep everyone updated as to when the next episode goes live. But thank you for listening. I am really excited to launch this. And yeah, that's all from me. Thank you. Bye.